that's the clue we have. So perhaps it's the universal harmonic that creates life.
Most of us tend to think of things as either alive or dead. But the transition from not alive, the inanimate state, to the animate state, is that transition only possible as a single step, or is it possible as a series of steps? If it's possible as a series of steps, then the intermediate states would be partially alive. Now you might say, well, come on, it's either alive or it's not. And I would say, well, alive means it's got cells, the cells are replicating, the cells are doing this, that, and the other. And you need all of that to be fully alive. But the chance of getting that all in one go seems a little bit remote. So maybe we got one of the attributes early on, and then it acquires another attribute and another, and eventually it reaches the point where it is fully alive.
Professor John Sutherland is trying to retrace the steps in the origins of life, in search of the processes that animate a cell into being.
Of course, the cell is more than just the chemicals that comprise it, because a cell that's just died is still the chemicals that are there. So there's something that energizes it, that coordinates it. And we don't know how to get that, but that's the goal.
So what we're doing here is putting the sample into an apparatus in which it will be irradiated by ultraviolet light.
In a series of experiments that simulated the conditions of a young rocky planet, Sutherland successfully achieved stage 1, producing the basic components of a cell: lipids, proteins, sugars, and nucleic acids.
What we found is that you can make all of the components for life under slightly different conditions. When you first see it happen, it's like magic, but it isn't magic. It's not as hard to make as we originally thought.
All the hardware of a cell can be created from a single base molecule that's widespread among the stars. But what about the next step? How is that hardware organized and energized into life?
If the conditions are the same elsewhere, what are the chances that you can go from building blocks to life? The chemistry of cells is unique in that it's self-organized. So one part of chemistry is actually controlling another, and yet somehow that's controlling the first one. Chemists are used to controlling the chemistry themselves, and the idea of letting things run and go off of their own accord is something that goes slightly against your chemical education. How can chemistry take place, if you like, with the experimenter just setting the system up and then letting it go of its own accord?
Life is information that can reproduce itself. Not hardware, it's genetic information. That's the key to life, is the information in the DNA and the ability of the DNA to express that information in proteins and propagate the information.
Oh, my life, bro.
DNA is the blueprint for all of life on Earth. An instruction book for how to make and maintain all living organisms. Encoded in the twin coiling lines of a double helix is the genetic information that tells life to build a rose, or a leopard, or a blue whale.
Ain't a funny talk on this shit. That's funny.
The characteristic molecules that life makes.